Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Take Back My Brain. Today we have a treat for you. We're going to kind of riff on some homeschool things for you with my friend Linda Ugelow. So, Linda, welcome back to the podcast.
It's so fun to be here.
Awesome. And if you don't remember Linda, she was on an interview with me a while back, and she has the book Delight in the Limelight, and she helps people with public speaking and overcoming those fears and those kind of things. And so if you haven't listened to that interview, please go back and do so because it is amazing. You'll love it. So, but today, Linda and I were talking on the last, off record that we both homeschool. We're kind of unschoolers, and so we just wanted to share our experiences in homeschooling and hoping that it will lift some of you guys up who are homeschooling, or maybe some of you who are on the fence about it and not quite sure. We'll just give you our experience and kind of go from there. So, what do you think, Linda? Where should we start?
I was just wondering, where my brain just went was what made me want to homeschool in the first
Yeah.
place.
Okay. Well, why did you want to
We-
homeschool? Yeah.
I think it came out of my college experience where I was not able to graduate. I was told I wouldn't graduate unless I had classes in a foreign language. And
Oh,
at the time, I had two in French, two in German, and one in Hebrew. But they said three in French, two in German, and one in Hebrew. And they said that wasn't sufficient. It had to be 4 semesters in one language.
oh,
And I
goodness.
said, well, we're already, a month into the semester. Supposed to graduate at the end of the semester. What do you recommend I do? I can't just join a class now. And they said, well, do an independent study. I went, what's that? And they said, well, just find one of the teachers in the department and have a meeting with them, and you come up with what you have a weekly meeting with, and that's it. And so I got together with one of the French teachers. We came up with a list of French books in translation that I was going to
Wow.
read. And every week we met and we talked about the books. And it was so much fun. And I thought, how come I didn't learn about this sooner?
Mm-hmm.
It was like I realized this is how I wish all of my education or a lot of my education could have been. Like
Mm-hmm.
very personalized, what I
Yes.
was interested in doing and having very personalized feedback. And I I don't know how it happened, but when I graduated, I remember thinking, finally I can read the books that I want to read and not what someone else tells me to read.
I thought the
Somehow,
same thing,
did you
Linda.
have that?
Yes. Yes, I had that epiphany. I'm like, I actually like to read now, where I didn't before.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And then I
Mm-hmm.
came across John Holt. Have you heard of John Holt?
He's amazing. Yes.
Yes. So he, at the time, he was the school reformer who then decided schools cannot be reformed and rather parents should take over the experience because his feeling was that kids learned when they were interested.
Hmm.
And too many times or too often, kids are not interested in what they're served at school. And I just devoured his books. I thought it was amazing. And I always had in mind that if I was ever going to have a kid, that I would like to homeschool them. And that's what I said to my husband, my boyfriend, who was to become
Hmm.
my husband. I said, by the way, I want to homeschool. And he said, oh, I think that's a crazy thing. And I've never heard of such a thing. And he grew up in Hungary. And I said, well, did you like your school experience? And he stopped and he thought, no, I hated it.
Hmm.
I did my best to get by with the minimum I could, manage with.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, it was like immediately he shifted and he supported me. So
Wow.
that's how I got interested in it on a like intellectual or emotional level.
Hmm.
But it wasn't until my daughter was, I think, 3 years old that I actually connected with the community here in Massachusetts.
That's
What about
awesome.
you?
Well, I didn't have a good exposure to homeschooling because there were some homeschoolers that lived next to my parents growing up after I went to college, and I'm like, I will never homeschool like that. So I'm like, that's just weird. But then my son was in kindergarten and I married my husband. And he has cousins that homeschool. They had 8 kids and they homeschooled. And we got to hang around with them a lot. And I just loved the family. I'm like, I could do this because I just missed being with my son for one. And he's bored in school. So a lot of the things that they were doing in kindergarten, like we had already done at home. Like I'd already been homeschooling him. We were reading, we did the puzzles, and he loved the independent stuff. He did fine in school, but he just loves to learn. And I didn't want him to lose that because, again, I had the epiphany like, I really did not enjoy school. And I didn't want that to be his experience. And so just other things happened and we decided that I got pregnant with our daughter and I wanted to stay home. So I quit working and we started homeschooling when I had my daughter. So my son, he was second grade and my daughter was a baby. And gosh, it was so much fun after the first 2 years because the first 2 years, I think I was just trying to make sure that everybody knew it was okay. And so we were doing, the curriculum in a box and, trying to stay on a good schedule and I had a new baby. I was like
You're trying to do
lost my
school at
mind,
home.
trying to school at home. And then,
Yeah.
then I went to a homeschool conference and they talked about unschooling. And I'm like, that is what I need. But she's like, you have to unschool your own mind first before you can unschool your kids. And because my son and I, we were both crying one day, and he's like, "This isn't any fun." I'm like, "No, it's not. We're going to change it." And we did. And so, not that it was perfect after that, but it was so much more fun.
Yeah.
And I think I've unschooled my daughter better than I unschooled my son. But we just kind of went with their bents, just with whichever direction that they really wanted to go. And I felt like it was just a beautiful experience.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
was it clear to you what your kids were interested in?
Very clear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did it change over time? Of course it did. For a while, our son was interested in electricity and those kind of things. And he's always been interested in history, but he kind of had a little thing here and there. But then all of a sudden he stopped doing all the experiments. We're like, well, I guess we're moving on from there. You know, Electricity wasn't an interest anymore. But he always had a bent towards music. He's a phenomenal musician. So we got to focus on all of that. He bought the local piano tuner's business when he was 16 and started tuning pianos and hasn't looked back since.
So
He
you homeschooled him through the remainder of his let's say what would have been public school.
yeah, kindergarten through or second grade through 12th grade.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we went from when she was 3 until she was 10 years old. So she
Wow.
joined the school system when she was in the middle of 5th grade, or would have,
Uh-huh.
yeah, what was the
Did
middle
you
of
go to
5th grade.
public school or did you do an
We
alternative?
did public school because we didn't have anything alternative that was near
Yeah.
enough.
Mm-hmm.
We did visit a Montessori school, but she just said it's too far away.
Oh.
She didn't want to do the commute. And I figured we've already paid for public school, and I didn't really want her to go to school, but she wanted to try it. So
Mm-hmm.
there was part of me that wanted her to not like it.
Yeah.
And it was this big dilemma because there were 8 teachers in the 5th grade, and I heard great things about one of them,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Fercara, I remember his name was, because he was more outside the box. It was more like what we did. And I thought, well, should I let it be random and she most likely will get another teacher and then she'll come back to homeschooling? Or should I advocate for her to be in this particular teacher's
Oh, yeah.
class? And then I decided I'm going to advocate for her, and she loved him. They
Aw.
were always off on field trips, which was what we did too.
Yep.
So, I mean, one of the things that made our experience so magical is that I convinced 2 of my friends with kids the same age, and we had done something called music together.
Yeah.
Together, so
Mm-hmm.
we knew each other from this when the kids were infants, and we'd be singing with them. And my background is in music and movement, so I could, carry on with that. I could do music and movement with all the kids. And then I met another person in town who had 2 children the same age. So the 4 of us got together 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh, nice.
And, like one parent was into experiments, like science
Mm-hmm.
experiments. And I was into music and movement. And others were into like setting up trips to nature. And we would have picnics, and we'd,
So you kind of
canoe.
made your own little co-op.
We made our own little co-op. It was amazing. And not only that, we also had a larger homeschooling community that was very active, more than one actually. And we could find out what trips were being made by those groups. Like we went to like every museum in the area, and such interesting things that we would never have done. The stamp museum and the ironworks and these historic areas. And they were thrilled to have homeschoolers come because generally they only got people coming on the weekends or after
Right.
school hours.
Yeah.
So for us to like visit these art museums and other kinds of historic museums, and it was I thought it was a fabulous education. For me too, I was
Mhm.
learning alongside her. And I just loved hanging out with other parents who were, and seeing the kids just be in this place of, joy and delight.
Yeah.
The challenge for me was that my daughter didn't show a lot of interest in any area. She was interested in
Mm,
other kids and what other kids were interested
sure,
in.
which is normal too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I was much more introverted, but she was an extrovert. And so her idea of a great day was like four different play dates. So that's where I put a lot of my energy. And I kept waiting for her to be like, oh, I'm so interested in this kind of history or this area, but it never really stuck early on.
Hmm.
But so my philosophy was it's a combination of one, what I'm interested in doing.
Yes.
So we always went to the library. We got bundles of books and we were reading on the hammock, together.
Hmm.
Actually, we did that way past her stopping homeschooling. And she also loved math. So we got, in the pharmacies they'd have these little math books of
Yeah.
addition,
Hmm.
multiplication. She adored those. It was
Right.
like I remember being up at 10:30 at night and she'd say, "Mom, one more page, one more page." And I'd say, "No, we've got to go to sleep. No, one more page." And I'm thinking if she ever goes to school, I'm not going to hear this again.
Right.
Right. And
Hmm.
which is exactly what happened. So it was like what I was interested, some little hints of what she was interested in, and then what our friends were interested in.
Hmm.
That was how we comprised our what we did.
Yeah, us was very similar. Because I we started when my daughter was a baby, so she just went along with everything. But whatever my son was interested in, and we had just a really great group of homeschoolers that we got to hang out with. We did speech and debate with them. We traveled around. We did plays, dramas, musicals. We did field trips, and we just had a great time, picnics, and all sorts of fun stuff. So I loved that experience, and I loved to watch the kids, just kind of just grab on to learning. We read so many books like you. We would, read like, who knows how many books, a week together. My son was interested in history, so we did a lot of history stuff, which then I got really interested in it because I'm like, I never learned this. This is really fun. And then we could go off on tangents together because we weren't bound by a specific curriculum or a schedule or anything like that. If we wanted to study ancient history for 6 months, we could do that and just kind of dive in and just have fun and watch documentaries and, talk to other people about it and go and play and, go build forts, just like we read about, in ancient civilization or whatever it might be. So I miss those younger days because we
Yeah.
just were more hands-on, active, all this kind of things. And my son and my daughter were very different. So my daughter is 18 and she's kind of finishing up everything, I guess you would call it that. But we've just been animals, 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 horses, horses, horses with her, which is beautiful and fun. Just so different from my speech and debate, piano tuner, son. So very, very, very different.
Yeah. So what were you required to do as a homeschooler in terms of reporting to the school system?
Yeah, when we started, we had to just fill out a form, and then you either needed to do testing, you could dual enroll, or you could have a supervising teacher. So I went back to school, got my teaching certification so that I could be a supervising teacher. So I did our family, and then I had 25 other families every year to help them fulfill that requirement because I didn't want to do the testing. We did testing every now and then just to kind of see, just because actually, because my husband was worried about it,
And how did
and
that turn out? Like, what
it
did you
started
just,
out fine.
it's
Yeah,
fine. Isn't that amazing?
fine. It was fine, passed with flying colors kind of thing. Um, and I would help other people come out of the public school system and kind of transition and just to give those kids a love for learning that they never had. And that was always fun to watch that, those families transform. Did it always work? No. But it was fun to be on that path with them for sure.
Yeah, yeah. We also had the ability to do I would make a once a year report,
Hmm.
basically saying this is what we did and what we're going to do. So only one time did I write to them, and it was about 2 or 3 pages. And I would say, I would kind of like break it into educationese is what I used to call it. Like, this is what we did in English. We read these many books.
Hmm.
This is what we did in history. We read these many books. We went to this museum. We did this kind of we for science. We walked around this this pond, and we studied the ecosystem every single month through the seasons, and things like that. And I
Yeah.
would just kind of like, according to whatever the school was looking at, I would just compartmentalize everything we did
Yeah.
into those areas. And it was very, very easy. And I did say to you before we started that I was my school system didn't have any kind of standards for homeschoolers. So
Mm.
I and maybe 3 or 4 other parents, moms, got together with the school and we helped draft the requirements for homeschoolers. And I did get help by some other homeschooling, very knowledgeable people in the state in helping me to really draw a line in the sand of what they're able to, what they couldn't ask of us. So we were very clear that ask any more than was legally required. And
Hmm.
so I was able to insert this reporting system because I didn't want to do the testing. I didn't want to have
Yeah.
her to have to go to a teacher in this school. I just want to say, we've been doing, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of how Iowa was too. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you just filled out a form and said, this is what we're doing in, math, science, social studies,
Mm-hmm.
history, whatever all those
Mm-hmm.
were. There's 5 different areas. Um, and then you just put the bare minimum and that's it. And you had so many hours as long once you fulfilled those hours. But um, yeah,
You know,
it's been pretty
crazy,
easy.
Lori. My daughter still to this day, and she's 29,
Yeah.
and she'll still say, which book was it that we read about that woman who became a painter like in life? I
Oh,
said, wasn't that Grandma Moses? She said, oh yeah, that's the one. What was the name of that book? And I can't believe that she remembers that.
mm-hmm.
And she asks these questions regularly, like, oh, what was that thing we read? Because everything that we did as homeschoolers is so memorable to her,
Mm-hmm.
and so little of what she learned in school was memorable.
Right.
And I think that is so telling because she was having fun all the time when we were homeschooling,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't overloaded. I think one of the things I hated about school is that they had us do many things that it made us skip. We had to scan and skimp and do as little as possible because I didn't have time to read any book
Oh,
fully or think
oh.
about it. It was just so, you know, official.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
Whereas that loved, we read times.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What a joy to be able to read something that you love more than once.
Yeah, exactly. And not feel like you're wasting your time doing it
Mm-hmm.
or, having your children learn something that they could really care less about. What's
Mm-hmm.
the fun of that? And I've had people kind of criticize and say, well, there's a lot of things that we have to do in life that aren't fun. So that's how you teach kids to, deal with life is to make them learn things that aren't fun. Like I think life just teaches us that naturally without having them to hate
That's
what
why
they're
that's why we have
learning.
so many antidepressants being sold.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So it's so silly to me. But I felt like we didn't fall into, antisocial homeschoolers or anything like that. We were out and about in the community doing all sorts of things. We went and visited the nursing home every week and, talked with people. One of my sons, he was going to be best man in his wedding. It was a 70s, or was he 80 at the time? He might have been a little over 80 at his wedding, but he couldn't because of COVID. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let him out of the nursing home, but he developed that strong of a relationship with this gentleman in the nursing home, and they just solved the world's problems every Tuesday together, you know? And of course, he had lots, people would be listening, like, that's kind of weird. This 80-year-old man was going to be the best man, but that's how much he respected, him and loved him. And then, of course, he had his same age
Peer,
friends in his
yeah,
wedding as
or
well, his brother, but
well, that's the thing I really loved about homeschooling is how
yes.
they're exposed to kids at all different ages. Whereas I
Mhm.
remember being in school and feeling like, oh, I only belong to my age group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so great to see how many homeschoolers, and you can't say this absolutely, but I noticed it, that the homeschoolers we hung out with, no one was afraid to talk to their elders or to other parents, to
Mhm.
authority figures. They felt like, oh, this is part of my greater extended community.
You're right.
And
You just did. It wasn't
mhm,
even something I felt like we had to teach them. They just, because we were out in the community, we weren't in a classroom with just the same age peers all the time.
right. And the adults were sharing experiences with the kids.
Yes.
So
They
they
weren't
felt
always an authority figure and like, you have to do this kind of thing. They were coming alongside of them and being a mentor and just a fun person to be around.
hmm yeah, yeah. I can't, I mean, just thinking about it, I just love those years. They were really the most enchanted years of our lives. And I remember
Hmm.
even my daughter, I think she said at age 4, 5, and 6, she said, my life is perfect. I don't want it to change.
Aw. Yeah. That's
And
so
I remember one time it was after we were lying out in the hammock together reading books, and she said, "Oh, I hear the school bus. Aren't we lucky? We can just lie here in the hammock."
yes. Oh goodness, Linda, my daughter said the same, similar things, or we'll be driving by and there's a great big fence around the school system and the kids are all like locked inside and she'll just look to me and go, "Thank you. Thank you." Or a cold morning, the bus drives by and she'd be like, "Thank you."
That's so great. That's so great. Well, it's interesting. I mean, one of the big things that people object to is like they're convinced that kids won't be socialized correctly
Yes,
if
I hear
they're
that.
not in the school system. And I have to say, Lori, that, because of my work as a speaking confidence coach and
Mm,
just I'm so aware of the trauma that every person has from school. And just like thinking about middle school and all the bullying that goes on and the exclusion and rejection. And I'm thinking, what kind of socialization are people feeling is so wonderful
right.
in school when so many people have PTSD
Hmm.
that they need to clear later on in their life.
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
not to say that, every homeschooling person's experience, didn't have that. We actually in our group had a situation that in fact broke the four families apart,
Oh, shoot.
which is one of the older boys in the group started to bully the youngest boy.
Oh, hmm.
And the four of us moms, we tried different things, but none of us had the skills to work it out. And so we decided, well, maybe we shouldn't hang out at home so much. We should just do things out and about. So we did some drama classes and art classes and we would do those kinds of things away from somehow it seemed to be more aggravated when the
Hmm.
kids were kind of left running around at home while we were
Sure.
cooking in the kitchen or something. But eventually, I felt that that shifted the dynamics somewhat, and it was concerning to one of the families that it was the family of the oldest boy, and they decided they were going to go to what is it, the Steiner school,
Oh, uh-huh.
Waldorf school.
Yeah.
And so actually two of the families ended up saying we're going to no longer going to homeschool, we're going to go to the Waldorf school. I didn't want to be part of the Waldorf school. And but that's when my daughter said, "Yeah, I think I want to try out school too. If they're trying out school, I want to try out school."
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it was the beginning of the end of it for us.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
when she was in eighth grade, I took her out of school
Hmm.
and we lived in Hungary for 4 months
Wow.
because my husband's Hungarian and he never spoke Hungarian to her. I spoke Hungarian to her. My Hungarian's pretty bad. So I was teaching her incorrect Hungarian, but a few good phrases. But that's as far as she got. And I thought, how is she going to speak to her cousins and her
Oh,
grandparents?
yes. Yes.
So I took her out of eighth grade. We lived there for 4 months. I wanted her to just be in language school with me, but she said, no, I like to be with other kids. I want to go to school. So we found an alternative school there, but it was not a good experience for
Oh,
her.
shoot.
But she did, when it got really bad, I took her out of that school and I brought her into my language school, which she adored. And she agreed, yes, this is what I should have been doing all along.
Hmm.
And then when she went back to school, they said, well, she's missed all this math, so we're going to put her back. And she didn't like that at all. So I did hire her a tutor for her to jump ahead, actually
Hmm.
2 levels, so she could be with her friends
Yeah.
in the math level that her friends were in. And it's like, yeah, she was gone for 4 months, and yes, she was able to catch up, you know,
Yeah.
as
Because it
she
doesn't take that long to
it
catch up,
doesn't take
if
that
we want to
long.
call it catching up.
If you want to call it that. And she doesn't even use math now. It's like
Oh.
my point in doing it was that I didn't want her to feel like she was not good at math
Yes.
anymore. It was
Hmm.
just that, and that's what I felt they were telling her, that now you're not good at math because you missed 4 months.
Right.
Another funny experience we had was when she was 13. No, was it before or after? So I was part of a Women's World Music Group, and
Oh, mhm.
we used to tour around internationally as well. And we had a trip to India. I think she was in 10th grade. Maybe she was in 10th grade. And so we were going to go for 3 weeks. So I spoke to the vice principal and I said, I'm going on tour with my Women's World Music Group for 3 weeks to India. And she said, "Oh no, if Lexi misses 3 weeks of class, we're not going to be able to graduate her from this, term because that will be truancy. She's only allowed, X number of days out of school." I said, "What do you?" I said, "What do you think she's going to miss?"
Right.
I
And
said,
everything she's
"And
going
what
to
do you
learn
think
in India.
and what do you think she's going to gain if going in India and traveling around?" And I I was just so pissed. I couldn't even speak to this person. I lacked my speaking confidence in the moment, and that was before I found it. I think it would have been different today, but I realized I had a couple of options. One is I could say, "Fine, we'll just homeschool." I mean, we have
Right.
big deal. So if she's not going to graduate, I'll keep her out of school for the rest of the term, and then we'll come back if she wants in the
Hmm.
fall because it's public school. They can't deny us.
Right. They can't.
So we could just change to homeschooling and come back. But we didn't have to do that because I decided to go to the principal.
Mm.
And when I went to the principal, he says, "That sounds like an amazing trip. Have a great time."
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, how could you deny a child of her age, especially that experience? Because that's a once in a lifetime experience for most people.
Absolutely.
And why not go with your mom? That's what I love about homeschooling, especially with like my daughter now, because there's an 8 year age gap between my son and daughter. And I don't think if we would have homeschooled that they would be as close as they are. Their relationship is just so much fun. But because I started getting into the health world and I got my certifications and went back to school and all those kind of things when she turned about 6. And so she's kind of been with me on this whole journey and gone to all the conferences with me. And we travel here and there and everywhere. And it's just been so much fun. It's such a good education that she just kind of has absorbed and been around just some really amazing confident women and other leaders in the world, and there's no way she would have ever gotten that at school. And so
Hmm.
she's more introverted, a little more shy, and so she doesn't like a lot of crowds, but when we get in those situations she's completely fine. It's completely different than if she were to walk into a school system and be with the same amount of peers. But if she has people of different age groups who come up and actually, ask her questions and she can engage with them, it's completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. And also because there's so much fewer kids out and about doing those kinds of things, they
Right.
get amazing, wonderful attention and
They do.
reflection, positive reflection on themselves, you know?
Yeah,
The other thing I wanted to just highlight for people who are listening, because we're touching on it, is you can travel off season.
you
And
can.
it's so much cheaper not to go during school vacation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go anytime you
Oh,
want,
yeah.
where and you're paying like almost half price a lot of the times. And, you know, it's that was a real treat for us also, especially because, you know, half of the family is in Hungary and we travel to
Right.
Europe a lot.
Yeah.
It would be, you know, if you have to travel just in the summertime, wow, it's like super expensive. But if we could
Mm-hmm.
go in April or May, it's so much less.
Yeah, that's the one thing we've loved about homeschooling is just the freedom to go, well, we want to go here in February. So we are. My
Hmm.
husband, we both work from home. He's a farmer. I have my business here and we can just stop and go wherever we want with the kids. And we can still do that. My son is married and now I have a grandbaby but we're going to be able to do things with them because they're going to follow that homeschooling path too. So I love how it just brings families together. We're not off doing our own separate things and we just haven't had the issues that a lot of people say, oh, I bet now that they're a teenager, XYZ is happening. And we just never really experienced any of
Hmm.
that. And it
Hmm.
sounds like, Linda, that you kind of kept your even though you didn't keep homeschooling, you kind of still had your homeschool theme
Yes, yes.
going. Like, I think once you have that, you kind of don't lose it because you kind of just made it your a family value of
Yes,
learning. And
yes,
that makes a
absolutely.
big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to touch, I'm thinking of the audience, people who are interested or skeptical or curious about homeschooling. One other thing that, I mean, we have talked about this, but I think it's worth understanding is the idea of, you know, well, what won't they learn if they're not in school that they should be learning?
Hmm.
And I don't know how you thought about this, talked about, you know, learn more when are doing what they like and they're
Hmm.
interested in. But it also occurs to me, and I think this is more than ever now with like AI and Google, that, you know, who is making up what we should be learning about when there
Exactly.
are gazillion topics that are not even touched upon?
Hmm. I completely agree. So why are we setting this as the standard for every single person, pretty much no matter where you live, that is supposed to learn these things?
Hmm.
And like with my son, he's a musician, he was a piano tuner, he wanted to do some farming, he's now a county supervisor, so he's done really well for himself. They just bought their own acreage. But guess what? We never did high level math because you know what? He didn't need it. So why would we waste our time doing those things when we could focus on what he really wanted to learn? And
And
y- y-
especially when we have calculators and now
yeah,
AI, all you have to do is how do you do this or how do you figure this
there's
out or
YouTube. There's so
yeah.
many things. Like if you love learning, you can definitely find what you would like to learn. There's so
Hmm.
many resources now. But even before we had all that, I mean, there were still encyclopedias and books, and it was a little bit more difficult to find the information, but not enough that we actually had to have a school system in order to get a quote unquote education.
Hmm.
So I don't believe an education comes from books. I think it comes from life experience and the passions you have in your heart and how can you learn those passions and bents and, be a contributing member to society and bless other people with that. That doesn't necessarily come out of a public school education.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
I think so too. Awesome. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this. And God bless each and every one of you. And I will see you in the next episode. And thank you, Linda, so much for being here.
Thank you, Lori. It was really fun.
Awesome.